The 1911 is one of the most beloved firearms of all times, and whether or not you own one or even whether or not you like a 1911, chances are that you own a firearm that takes its designs from the original John Browning 1911. And a lot of people weigh in. Should I own a 1911? Should I carry a 1911? Because the bottom line is, a lot of people do. A lot of people in the military, a lot of police, a lot of civilians, a lot of marksmen, a lot of sportsmen carry 1911s because it's a fantastic pistol. So what we're going to take a look at is, as you're weighing out the pros and cons, we want to give you 5 of each to consider. So we're going to look at the pros first. Number 1, the trigger. I mean, it is really probably one of the nicest triggers of most handgun designs out there, because it's not a rotating trigger like you see on most. It pushes straight back and just a hair back, not way back like a lot of other triggers. So most people, especially people that are focused on the accuracy of a 1911, really they'll give its credibility to the trigger. And not a lot of guns utilize a 1911 style trigger, and I'm a little surprised because, you know, other than obviously the many varieties of 1911s out there, but I'm a little surprised it's not used a little more. Number 2, accuracy. I mean, goodness gracious, it's an incredibly accurate handgun. There is a reason why a lot of hunters will use a 10mm 1911, and there's also a reason why a lot of competition shooters use a 1911. And when it comes down to it, that's probably one of the main reasons most people actually do carry a 1911, is because they find themselves performing better with a 1911 than most other handguns that they've tried. Number 3, choice of manufacturers. You know, this is a big one. The 1911 is one of the most reproduced handguns on the planet. I don't even know how many people make a 1911, because chances are, even if you listed all the major manufacturers that made 1911s, there's still a lot of smaller manufacturers. And even if somehow you listed all of those, there's a lot of hobbyists producing 1911s. It's one of the most produced, as far as a variety goes, of different manufacturer handguns on the planet. So you could choose. If you like Ruger, you could pick them. If you like Springfield, they make one too. You like SIG, they make 1911s. So depending on, you know, you could really go endless directions on who you would prefer to make your 1911. Number 4. Variety of calibers. Now originally and traditionally it fires a 45 ACP, but they also make 1911s that fire 9mm, 38 Supers, 40 Smith & Wessons, 22 Magnums, 22 LRs, and I'm sure there's some I've left out there. So you also have a variety of calibers to choose from as well. Number 5, reliability. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say they didn't like their 1911 or they didn't think it was reliable. I really don't think I've ever heard a negative story about a 1911. I'm sure they're out there. I've just never heard one. And that speaks widely to their reliability. But now, with all things that you buy, there's also some cons. So let's take a look at 5 cons. Number 1. Standardization of the 1911 has gone out the window. When you have a variety of manufacturers, about 20 years ago, you had a variety of manufacturers making very similar handguns that could probably even switch parts, that kind of thing. If you went and bought a particular part for a 1911, in theory, it should fit all 1911s. However, in the last 2 decades, that's kind of just gone out the window. There is no standardization of the 1911 anymore for the most part. So what you're seeing is that you can't easily do that. When you pick a particular brand, you're beginning to be stuck with that brand, if that makes sense. So standardization of the 1911 was always really one of the pros of the 1911, but that's kind of just gone out the window. Number 2. Ammo capacity. I mean, it's a low capacity handgun. It's a single stack, and that's really the problem that a lot of people have with it. If you ask most people that love 1911s why they don't carry 1911s, A lot of it has to do with the ammo capacity, you know, and they are, for the record, making double stack 1911s now, so I don't want to say that this throws that out the window, that if you want a double stack magazine that you can't have a 1911, because they also make 1911s that are double stacked too. But 99.9% of the 1911s out there are single stacks. So if you're, you know, if you want a double stack, then that variety and that choice of manufacturer, that pro goes out the window. So if you're looking for a double stack 1911, they make some great ones out there. But then it erases some of the pros. You just got to know that. Number 3, cocked and locked, single action only. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. You know, when it comes to this issue, I believe personally it's because they can see that hammer back. I know that may sound strange, but a lot of people carry Glocks, and Glocks have the pin pulled back in the firing ready, cocked and locked position as well. They just can't see it. And it's something about that visual of seeing that hammer back that I think really makes a lot of people struggle with the idea of carrying a 1911. But if you're going to carry a gun like a Glock, you know, it's the same thing, and in so many ways the 1911 is safer than a striker-fired pistol without a manual safety, because it also has a manual safety, but it also has a grip safety. It's one of the safest firearms on the planet. So, you know, what a lot of people struggle with on the con is really, you know, it's a pro as well, but if you don't want to carry a gun cocked and locked, then you definitely don't want a 1911, because it's your only way unless you're going to rack that slide when you draw it. Number 5, the weight. Now, this is kind of a plus and minus, because when you shoot a 1911, the weight helps with recoil, of course, but most people carry their guns all day and they don't shoot their guns all day. So the vast majority of the time that you're carrying that gun around, you're dealing with the weight of it. You're in a negative way. You're not, you know, when you get the positive effects of the weight with the recoil, most of the time that you're carrying that gun. A lot of people carry their gun for weeks without ever firing it. You know, the vast majority of the time that is a negative piece, and it's going to weigh heavy, and if you carry your gun all day, it's a heavy gun, and you just have to know that. And you know, and for the record, full-size guns that have a composite grip, they are lighter, but they often will carry, you know, again, they have typically double stack magazines, so they carry more bullets, and when in the end, they're not a lot lighter, but it does make a difference. Every little bit counts, but you have to know that the weight, it is a heavy gun. Now, for some people, for example, my brother, he will never buy a gun that isn't all metal. It's just a rule he has, and I know there's a lot of people out there, so maybe this weight issue isn't an issue at all. But if you're looking for a gun to carry and you're weighing the pros and cons of the 1911, I think you have to look at the weight as a con. So there you go. There's 5 pros and 5 cons of the 1911. Great firearm, highly recommended, but it's something you need to seriously consider, because it's typically a little bit different than most semi-automatic pistols out there. Even though they take their influence from it, it's still, as far as the user piece of it, the things you have to do, they're a little bit different, so just be aware of it. Hope this video helped. If you have any others, put them in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.